Welcome to The Bridge. Fun conversations on culture, life, and everything in between.
Welcome to The Bridge. We are a show that connects East and West. My name is Jason. I'm originally from sunny California, and now I'm living in beautiful Beijing. Today with me is Alex.
Hello, everybody. This is Alex. Sure, I am from the northeast part of China. I am speaking to all of you with Jason together in Beijing.
Oh, yeah.
Find us where you get your podcasts. If you like the show, then consider pushing the like button or giving us 5 stars. Suggestions, comments, anything you would like to share, email us at welovethebridge@gmail.com. We love the bridge.
So I thought we would talk a little bit about what language means to our identity. Now, it sounds very academic-y.
I know. Sounds profound.
This came from a lady named Tatala's Weibo account. For those of you in America who don't know what Weibo is, what's the closest equivalent to Weibo?
The Chinese Twitter, almost.
Twitter?
Yeah.
It's like, but it's got videos. I mean, it's more video oriented, and Twitter's more text oriented. Is that right?
Weibo kind of started just started with text. They were doing the same word limit as Twitter was. At least when I started using it back in like over 10 years ago, it was mostly just text.
So she is an influencer on Weibo, and she has millions of views for a video she recently made. And so she's also a student at Harvard. So she's living in Harvard, in Boston now, and attending Harvard, and she's getting a graduate degree. So this is a very smart lady. 24-year-old Tatala explains in this video, which I watched, why, and she did it in a very academic-y way. She's quoting books throughout it. It was like a paper. Did you see the video?
Oh, I haven't watched the video. You should probably describe it for people that are listening.
So she is talking about how her identity was basically kind of stripped from her as she started to learn English. And she talks about several different angles to which she attributes a decision not to continue pursuing learning the English language further than she has already done so.
Yeah.
So she's able to read, Montesquieu in translation in English and stuff. So it's not like she's quitting where she still needs it. Her English is very good. She mentions what really started this chain of events that led to this decision was when she was in primary school. So we're talking a long time ago when she was very young. The teacher put in a hat a bunch of different names that are English names and passed the hat about. And each person drew by lottery what their name was going to be. Yeah. And so she ended up with the name Wency, Wency, I know, which is confusing to me. And I'm sorry, Tatala, but I've never heard this name in my life.
As an American person.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think your teacher is a cruel person, firstly. Yeah. But apparently she struggled with it because she couldn't pronounce the W. Coming from Dongbei, as our Alex is from. And she pronounced it Vency with a v sound instead of a w sound. So she had a great deal of trouble pronouncing her new English name, and she never at that time really thought about the fact that she already has a name, a Chinese name, and that she just accepted the fact that everyone was going to take on their new English identity. Yeah. So Alex, I got a question before we get into, there's so much to unwrap here because this story goes on. Where did the name Alex come from? Because certainly that's not your Chinese name.
Of course. It came from, the real story is that back then, funny enough to Tatala's experience of drawing English names out of hats, my English name wasn't Alex when I first started learning English in school. I was given the English name of Betty.
Very old school.
Very old school.
1930s.
I mean, my teacher didn't know better back then. Kudos to her. She gave me the English name of Betty when I started junior high school, which is like 7th grade. I was like, everybody else has like a 2-syllable English name, Mary, Lily, Rose. Well, Rose is 1 syllable, but I was like, I don't want to be Betty. Like, it sounds very common. It sounds very mediocre. I want something different. So I went into this textbook called the Cambridge International Exchange textbook. And I was like, let me pick a name that I think most people wouldn't be able to pronounce, which is very contrary to the whole notion of having a name, which is like, a code of you in society. I was like, I want a name that nobody else could pronounce. So I went into the textbook and I was like, this name seems pretty long and it has an X and a D and an R.
Oh, so you went for the whole like Alexandria or something?
Alexandra.
Alexandra.
I was like, I want this name. And then I brought that name back to my class and I asked the guy who had the best English in my class back at the time. I was like, my friend, can you say this? And he said it in a very perfect, pronunciation. He was like, oh, Alexandra. And then he's like, oh, it's a very beautiful name. Nobody else will be able to pronounce it. I was like, all right, that's going to be my name from now on.
Wow. You wanted it to be difficult. I am such a nerd. I know the etymology of your name. So
yeah.
Do you know where Alex comes from?
I just know the meaning. I later looked it up. I know the meaning means protector of mankind.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to try to translate who this. So it's actually after a man. His name is Alexander the Great.
Yes.
Alexander the Great was actually, this is really interesting. So you have Confucius and you have Lao Tzu and you have Sun Tzu and you have all of Mencius and all these other famous philosophers. 3 of the ancient philosophers were very closely associated in ancient times in ancient Greece. So there was Socrates, and Socrates trained Plato. So a lot of people don't know that, but Plato actually learned philosophy from Socrates. Plato taught philosophy to his student Aristotle, and Aristotle taught Alexander the Great as just a young student. Alexander the Great was a prince, and Alexander ended up rising to power and conquering central, let's say the Middle Kingdom.
Yes.
He conquered the middle of the earth. So he went from Greece, marching across North Africa and the Middle East, and he went as far as India, and he created an empire that became the Hellenic Empire, and a lot of cities were named after Alexander. So there were cities called like Alexandretta, Alexandria, Alex, and they were just all over the Middle East. There are these cities with the Anglicization is Alex that were named after him. Dozens and dozens of cities named after this man who died at, I think, 27 years old. It's unclear why, but maybe he was poisoned. Maybe his cup had too much lead in it. No one's really sure, but he died young, and then his empire broke into little warring. Anyways, so you have a very, very interesting and historical name.
Thank you. I mean, when I picked that name, it definitely was for a much simpler reason. I just wanted to be different. But there was a good half a year where I gave up my English name, but not for the same reason, Tatala. By the way, I felt like it might be a little necessary to say, because people are probably, when I read the article, I was like, oh, this is a little confusing, because I thought Tatala was like someone from wherever that name sounds like it's from.
I'm like, this is her Chinese name. Doesn't sound Chinese to me, but what do I know? I'm American.
Yeah. So Tatala is like the nickname of her social media account. So that's not her real name, but like the sound of it, when you write it out in pinyin, it's like easily pronounced as like a foreign word, Tatala, but it's like Tatala.
Tatala.
I know it probably sounds the same for a lot.
No, I can hear the subtle change in vowel sound. Yeah,
the tone change, right? But that's their social media handle, which bears whatever meaning that she wants to give it, but that's not her real Chinese name. My name, though, Alex, I used it for a good, I think, 4 or 5 years. And then there's this other guy in my high school. He had an English name in high school. His English name was Adam. He doesn't use that anymore. He uses actual Chinese name, which is actually easier for a lot of people to pronounce because it's Homing. So it's very simple. He has reverted to that now. Everybody calls him Homing. But in high school, he had really, really, really good English. And I was like, oh, your accent. I like the sound you make when you speak English, We didn't have an idea of what accent was. And then he said, oh, you should call yourself Veronica, because Veronica is this person in, I think, Prison Break. I've never watched Prison Break. And he said, you should call yourself Veronica because it's a very good name. And then if you change your name to Veronica, then I can call you Vero. And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. So I changed my name to Vero. I started emailing people, and it'll come from my email address that says Alex. And then at the end of the email, I would write Best Vero. And that confused the heck out of everybody I was trying to contact. They were like, hold on. Wait, are you Alex? Like, who are you? But in high school, I didn't use Alex as an actual tag of who I am in society. So I was like, so what? I'm Alex today. I'm going to be Vero tomorrow. And then if I want to, I could be Betty again. Who cares?
So I have a question for you, Betty. What's your Chinese name, or what do your parents call you?
My parents call me Xuan Xuan because that's my Chinese name. My Chinese name is Xiaoxuan, which is not the easiest name to pronounce for people who don't speak the language. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could just drop the tones and just say Xiaoshuan.
Even the X sound is a little trickier because the X sound.
Just tell them it's SH, right?
Yeah, I guess, but they would. Oh God, it's the way that name has been botched in the States. Every time, I think I've talked about this before, when I was studying in the US, the most nerve-wracking situation for me to go into is when I would have to go to any office place that's not school. If I have to go to the DMV, if I have to go to the hospital or whatever government function that I have to go to, that's not the school, that they don't know how to say my name, or they don't know who I am. They have to read my name. And there are other people from other cultures who also have non-English names. The waiting room is it's such a torture because I have to look out for any unusual sound when they come out. And I'll be like, is that me? Like, do they mean me? Like, it's so.
My name is Shirley. Get away. What are you talking about? It's my turn.
Because they will say Xiaoxuan, like because the way that my name is spelled is XIAO. XUAN all together. Okay.
Yeah, they might try to use a Z sound.
They did. I was called Xia Huan, Xiao Huan, whatever, like all
Zhao Zhuan.
Oh my God. Right? And then it's very hard for me to understand if you're trying to get my attention or not. So me, so much anxiety when I go to those places. I was like, wow. Yeah.
You know, I have a similar issue with my English name here is every time I go somewhere, they're like, sign your name. Like it's no big deal. I have 4 names. God. So in English. So every time I have to write my name, everyone's just staring at me writing it for like what seems like 30 seconds. Because in America, I just go squiggle, squiggle. You know, really quick, that's my signature. But they're like, no, you can't just do that. You have to print your name and every document you ever sign in China. So printing my really long name, which has like 20 letters in it or something, takes forever every time. I just like, oh gosh, my hand cramps practically from having to write my own name. Let's talk about identity, because this is important for Tatala. This is about identity for her. She eventually reverted to being called her Chinese name and insists on being called by her Chinese name and refuses to have an English name, and which I think is great. Actually, I think it's a really beautiful thing. People should, I think in the West, start calling people by their their Korean name, their Japanese name, their Chinese name, the name that if that's what they want to be called, that's how they should be identified. I mean, if you're more comfortable with an anglicized name, great, then that's how you identify. I think that's really beautiful too. But I think, people should be more open-minded to not just name everyone Rose or Christy or something. Oh, you're from China. Great. Another Lily. No offense to all the Lilies out there. But if they want to be called, Xuan Xuan or whatever, that's fantastic. And that's what we should have to learn how to say their name. So I want to talk to you. When you're in America, you just go by Alex because it's convenient and you don't have to listen out for strange sounds. Is that right?
Yeah.
What's your thinking about how your identity takes on these different names? Do you change?
We've actually had a very profound conversation at one of our house parties that got a little heated. My friend from Germany, he's like Turkish with a German nationality. And he was like, why do you guys all have an English name? Because that's kind of like a Western colonization idea of who you need to be.
You've been colonized.
Yeah. And then my friend said, but we have an English name because we started having English names when we were learning English in school, but in China. And it's just kind of a fun game because that's a step of learning another culture. When I was learning Spanish, the first text in the textbook is like, oh God, I can't speak Spanish anymore. Me llamo, Bebe, it's like you started learning these names.
I was Gesson in French class. I was like, okay.
You started learning you started getting to know some of like the common names in that culture. And then you might be able to mix it with your like local names, like in the Chinese English textbook that Chinese kids use at school. There are Lile, there are Han Mei Mei, but then there are also Jack and John and, all of these names. And for us, it's like my friend said, we picked up that thing as part of learning English and we kind of stick with it because we went on to study English in college, and some of us graduated college and started working with international people. And it's easier for us to just go by that name. And it's, when we had a new name, it's fun because you could like it, like what I did. You could pick your own English name. You get to name yourself. It was kind of fun. And my friend from Germany was trying to say, like, you should be proud of your culture. My Chinese friend said that's exactly how we show that we're very proud of our own culture, because just having a different name, it's like having a different code for yourself in society. It's not going to change who we are. We don't really think that's going to change us. That's the kind of culture confidence that we have. And then I was like, see, it's the same thing. Like when you guys come to China, you want a Chinese name because it's fun.
Yeah,
and we like giving you a Chinese name because we get to give you the meaning of what Chinese culture is. And, we get to tell you what name you choose for yourself is more Chinese or not. Like, for example, this guy that we know, he insists on naming himself 白马王子, which means Prince Charming or Mr. Knight. Like he was using that. He was like, why can't I call myself that? Or like culturally, it looks just a little too silly.
Well, actually, that's really interesting that you bring that up, because a lot of Chinese people choose names that don't make any sense in English.
Cyclone.
Like, yeah, well, I mean, not even just cyclone, but just strange noises and stuff. I've had kids who their parents are like, they choose their kid's name and it's not an English name. And they're like, this is their English name. And I'm like, well, okay, it's not Chinese, but it's also not English. So, and we'll call them Vimian if you want, but I just want you to know that that's not an English name.
Yeah.
You're making some sounds and saying that's their English name. So I guess the same thing kind of exists. There are rules, but I want to talk about French for a second, because French is one of those languages that has more rules than other languages. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
For if you have a new noun, you can't just call it for like where it comes from, like skateboard. There's a council who will decide what skateboard is called and then tells skateboarders, you must call it this.
Whoa.
So I want to ask you a question real quick. When is your birthday?
My birthday is August 26th.
August 26th. So your French name is Natasha. Because every name in French traditional culture is named for the day that you are born. So my name is Jean.
How convenient.
Because there's a French naming calendar. Whatever day you're born, you take the name of the day.
This is a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yes.
I am Natasha.
Yeah, with CH. Yes. Natasha.
Wow. Okay. I like that. I'm going to start introducing myself as Natasha.
Okay. Well, so I also have a name background coming into China. So I took a Chinese class. Actually, I took one Mandarin class in San Francisco before I moved to China. My teacher named me Jiewan.
Okay. Like excellent literature?
Yeah, that's what she told me it meant too. But then I got renamed by my Cantonese teacher, Situ Jiewan.
Situ Jiewan. That is a
and then I came to China and I met my wife and we were dating and I met her uncle, and her uncle is this really powerful person who's extremely well versed in philosophy and history here in China. And he said, that's a terrible name.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, so you're going to be Shangguan Jiewan from now on. There wasn't a, do you want to be? It was just like, no, this is your name now.
You are.
And so from then it was like, that's my name now. So I really like it personally.
Yeah.
It's like wearing a hat. It's my Chinese identity. Sometimes people literally call me that as though it were my name and they don't even know my name Jason at all. And I kind of like that. It's like, and even I've applied for a green card, which we talked about.
Yeah.
My green card will not say Jason Smith on it.
It will say Shangguan Jiewan.
Yeah, it's going to say Shangguan Jiewan. So then I will legally become, I'm so excited about this opportunity to take on this additional identity.
I guess we didn't talk about that in the episode about moving to China. For every foreign nationality person coming into China, when you register, when you first move to the country, they do give you a random, like a Chinese name on your system.
Oh, yeah. Mine was like Jiesun or something like that. Yeah.
Jiesun, yeah. And then it's very funny, like, because you have to have a Chinese name to accompany your English name to be put into the system of a foreign national living in China. And then my dear friend Jen, who's been here for a long time, and she's like, I really want a legit Chinese name. Like, I want to have a real Chinese name put into the system, because when I came here, they put in Jenny because her name is Jen, but she's like, I don't go by Jenny, I go by Jen. And they just like insisted on calling me Jenny. If they don't call you Jenny, they then just call you, if it's something that they can't pronounce, they just call it like all the girls are called 美丽, like pretty. And so they're trying to have a legit Chinese name because they've been here for so long. They want something meaningful that also carries a story like yours.
Yeah, I always have difficulty shortening it, Alex. So you all have cool names, so like Xuan Xuan or whatever. And my wife is Xia Xia. Like that's what her parents call her, even though that's not her actual name.
Yeah.
So when I have Shangguan Jiewan, people can't call me like Lao Shangguan. It doesn't sound right because there's 3 sounds. It needs to be 2 sounds.
Yeah.
And I was told that Wen is too girly. So like I end up with no cool nickname, which bums.
老姐.
I want to move back to the case of this lady who's viral on Weibo and Bilibili.
Yeah.
I think her situation is a bit different because if you watch the entirety of her video, and she's also been written about. So I learned about her originally on Yahoo News. An article by Rebecca Moon talks about her case. And I also looked at various other websites where she's mentioned, including on the Harvard website and on whatsonweibo.com. There's an article about her as well. And me and our post-production expert, we talked to her on the phone about it, and we told her we were going to be doing this.
Okay.
For her, according to all these articles and her own video, it's about the fact that when she went to study in the United States and Australia, she always had to read everything in English, and she became an A student. So she became an excellent straight A student, basically, but having to learn everything in her second language and noticing that it was easier for other, like Australians, for example, to become friends with each other because they had insider discourse with one another. And she eventually realized recently that she took a class where it was about Chinese culture. And in that class, all the other students read the translations of those Chinese pieces of literature.
Yeah.
And she read the originals.
Yeah.
And she noticed that the effort that she put into that class was way lower, and she was still able to get an A. And she suddenly realized that she had been putting herself at a disadvantage her entire life.
Yeah.
Like her entire academic life, basically. Up until this point, she had made everything like 3-4 times as hard as it needed to be so that she could accommodate the institutions which she's studying in the US and Australia academically. And that she didn't want to have to identify as learning English as a second language anymore. And that it was extra obstacle, and that people at these institutions didn't see the extra effort that she was putting in and appreciating it to the degree that, it needed to be. And people weren't making the effort to befriend her to the degree to which she thought would be appropriate. So she has decided to only use English for, according to the video, to order coffee. But obviously she's at Harvard.
Yeah.
She's going to have to read some books in English, but she's not going to go above and beyond anymore to like get her Cambridge English dictionary out when she's studying.
I understand. I read the article. I feel like this is, as someone who was kind of, thrown into a society where a different language is spoken, you kind of have to make a lot of extra efforts to be part of that culture.
Yeah.
I guess she's just given up on getting better. Like she's not going to actively seek to be better at English. Like,
yeah.
So
I thought this was really interesting for a variety of reasons. And she points out some of those. This is a quote from her. Actually, I think she's quoting an academic here, but it says, native speakers found their lives easier, not because their English is better than mine. It is because they had the good fortune to be raised in environments where their native language acquisition coincides with the dominant linguistic group. So, she's talking about the added work level she has to put into this. Yeah. But I actually thought it was really interesting. And so I have looked at programs to study at some of the best universities in China. I've never actually done it, but I always toy with the idea of someday going to Tsinghua or Renmin University, one of the best universities in China. And I always play around with the idea. So I've gone to their website. They have a ton of programs that are completely in English. Yeah. So here are some of the programs. Global MBA, School of Economics and Management, completely in English. So if I wanted to go there, I wouldn't even have to learn Chinese. Yeah. Master's program in Chinese law, master's program in mechanical engineering, master of public administration, masters of global business, masters of public administration program, masters in architecture, masters in global, and on and on and on. I could just go down this list and bore you so much more than I've already have. But like my point is that those same kind of programs programs are not offered at Harvard. So at Harvard, you can do one of two things. You can study Chinese language. So they have Chinese language courses that are meant to help you learn Chinese, or you can take courses about Chinese culture in English. And they have no programs to accommodate Chinese speakers or Chinese readers at Harvard in the same way that many of Chinese institutions do for speakers of English. So we were talking in a previous episode about how great it would be more people to come to China to study, to learn about Chinese culture. China has made that ridiculously easy for foreigners to do because there are so many programs in English, whereas the United States does not have the same opportunities for people to come and study in their language of choice at our best institutions. And I think that is unfair.
I actually think, it's not a growing pain, but it's just historically, because China never went through thousands of years of colonization globally. But, UK was doing that. And that is the main reason why the English became a language that's spoken by everyone in the world. Like, if you want to be able to communicate with people that are from a different country, because of the historical reason, English is where it is today in terms of, popularity and how necessary it is to speak English to be able to kind of get out of the difficult situations or, go to a different country and travel. So I totally understand that. But it is changing a little bit. Like, China tries to be really, really accommodating to a lot of people, and being able to, offer things in English is probably it opens a door, because it's also an incredibly hard language to just randomly pick up. I would say
Chinese, Mandarin?
Yes. So, if you offer these academic programs in English, it's easier. It's welcoming to people from different parts of the world. So not just people from English speaking countries, for people from like other European countries, African countries, South American countries. They could all, as long as they all speak English, they could come to China, get the knowledge that they need to, and everybody could speak the common language. And I'm sure that as soon as they get used to it, like my friends, some of friends from other parts of the world, they've lived here, they did their undergraduate degrees in English. And their Chinese got so much better in the meantime. Now they're able to work in Chinese companies. They're just living here. They've been here for like over a decade. So like on China's side, it's not like, we're trying to appeal to people. That it's more like, this is a easier way, more common way of gathering talents from different parts of the world to be able to come here. It's like a knocking on the door that's equal to everyone. And then for American programs, I do think it'll be great if there are more, for example, if you could offer classes in Asian language, like in different Asian languages, if it's Asian studies program.
Yeah, if you're going to get a master's in Asian studies, which is a popular major in a lot of big universities, why not offer some of those programs in Asian languages? That does make a lot of sense to me.
I guess there's not enough immigrants yet. Like not enough people from that culture to speak the language.
Well, I think Mandarin is an increasingly popular language to learn globally now.